Hello everyone, my name is Tom, here for Talking Wolves, bringing you the first episode in what is hopefully going to be a monthly series. Once a month, we're going to be covering the main talking points of Wolves' fixtures from the previous month. It's called What We Learnt. It's pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to be going over the 4 games that Wolves played in August, and then obviously next month I'll be doing September's games, etc, etc, etc. So in this episode I'm going to be talking about the Arsenal, Chelsea, Burnley and Nottingham Forest games. I'm going to be going over some of the main talking points that have sort of come up in the fan base. And of course, if you do have any questions or any suggestions of your own, please leave them in the comments below and I'll make sure to do my best to answer all your questions and reply to any of the comments that you folks at home make, just so we can sort of have this sort of monthly conversation about how we think things are going, you know, just to check in on each other and make sure we're all doing okay, and most importantly making sure that, you know, we can have conversations about the events in a more general sense and see where the team's progressing as the season goes on. Okay, so without further ado, let's start with the first point, which is Mosquera. Yes, Mosquera, he needs his mentor. Mosquera has had a bright start to the season. I think a lot of us are enthused by what we've seen, but I think the main issue is the lack of an experienced partner next to him. Now, we have obviously seen with the Nottingham Forest game recently that Craig Dawson obviously came in and had a really solid performance. I think that's probably where Wolves are going to see the solution being filled, or the hole being filled in that defensive spot, because we're looking at the centre backs, and I think obviously the issue with that has been that Totti Gomez hasn't really looked all that solid. He's looked like he's got a mistake in him. He hasn't looked particularly comfortable on the ball, positionally a little bit stretched sometimes. And whilst Mosquera has been very solid, I think he needs someone a little bit older, a little bit more experienced in that centre-back pairing to make it work if we're going to switch to a 4. Now, obviously, I think Dawson is the perfect replacement for Totti in that centre-back spot. He's experienced, he knows the Premier League inside out, and also he's just a very good defender. And I think, honestly, either him or Santi Bueno are going to be really important when it comes to Mosquera's development. And I think if Gary O'Neill wants to play with that back 4, I think Bueno or Dawson have got to come in. Now, obviously the thing is with this is that you have 2 pretty different defenders. I mean, Bueno is not as combative. He's not like a traditional centre-half. He's better on the ball. He's comfortable in possession. And honestly, I think him and Dawson as a pair looked pretty good with, you know, against Burnley, albeit, you know, a kind of rotated Burnley side. I do think that him or Dawson offer up 2 very different options. And I think with so many games this season, I think actually it might be worth interchanging between Dawson and Bueno to partner Mosquera. So obviously Gary O'Neill kind of has to choose what he wants. Mosquera, I think, is pretty good on the ball already. So the question for me is do you have 2 defenders that are really good, decent ball-playing centre-backs and maybe kind of take out a little bit of the defensive steel, or do you add Craig Dawson in and you kind of have the opposite style of defender, in the sense that, you know, Dawson is the aerial threat, the physical defender. He's going to mark tight, whereas Mosquera is a bit more pacey. He doesn't necessarily need to get as close to his opponents because he can kind of use his pace to kind of, you know, give himself more time. But look, it's an interesting question. Let me know in the comments who you would prefer to see partner Yes and Mosquera in a 4, if we're assuming that Gary O'Neill is going to continue with that. Would you like to see Santi Bueno, or would you like to see Craig Dawson? Let me know. Okay, next up is another big talking point, again in defence, unfortunately, but it is Ryan Nori. A lot has been made of his first 4 games. I think pretty mixed bag. He had a really solid game against Arsenal, terrible game against Chelsea, again though good against Burnley, and good against Forest, albeit in a different position, which is what I want to talk about with this point. Okay, so obviously we've seen Nori in a back 5, and he's done excellently in a back five. Moving down to this 4 now, I think we sort of have an issue of him being isolated more one-on-one, obviously because there's the lack of extra centre-back there. I think where this maybe exposes Nori a little bit is that whilst his one-on-one defending is very good, he normally has a defender behind him, so he can take more risks with trying to put his foot in, maybe not being as protective of the ball as he usually is. So I think there's an issue there where he is struggling to use possession a little bit better, a little bit more intelligently, but also with his defending, because you notice with Madueke, he was backing off. He knows he hasn't got a centre-back behind him to kind of clear up the mess. And then obviously the issue with that is that he's more nervous, obviously. He looks more nervous to put in tackles. And I think where that could be fixed is either switching to a back five or pushing Nori up to left wing and having Totti as that kind of centre-back, left-back hybrid. It looked okay against Forest. Gary O'Neill tried it. Nori looked good overall in the game. The issue obviously then is his end product. Is it up to scratch to be a Premier League winger? We're yet to really see that. So we're kind of in this weird position. We're in this weird grey area where Nori is a little bit more exposed defensively as a left back, and also he can't get forward as much because he leaves far more space in behind him. We saw that against Chelsea. He was getting forward, but Totti was so exposed and it stretched the defence completely. Or do you put him at wing on the wing, have Totti switch to left back, and then you have a left-hand side which is fairly complementary with a defensive fullback and such a forward-thinking winger. But is Nori going to consistently produce the end product that we need from a starting Premier League winger? And you've also got to remember that Rodrigo Gomez is yet to really play all that much apart from the Arsenal game. My question there is, you kind of have to drop Hwang in that sense, or either put Rodrigo Gomez in instead of Nori and maybe have just Nori sticking as a left back. But yeah, that's the issue. With a back four, does Nori fit? Does he not fit? Is he a better left back? Is he a better left winger? Or do we just revert back to the 5 and use him as a left back? Because the 5 at the back does really complement him as a player, and I think we've got the most out of him because he can get forward and he doesn't have to worry too much about leaving the defence overexposed. But of course, if we go to a 4-3-3, then potentially that leaves some space for improvement. Okay, and that brings me on to my third point. We've got 4 today, so this is the second to last, and that is the 4-3-3. What do we do with the formation? This has been such a big question that Wolves fans have asked us. We've asked ourselves for years, because we have the 3-4-3, which works very well, but then, we kind of wanted to get more goals. So last season we scored a lot of goals in a 5, which I think showed that we can do it in that system. Gary O'Neill obviously wants to switch to a 4. He's made it pretty clear that the players that he has at the moment means that he can't quite do what he wants to do. Now, we bought in Andre, which I think is a really, really excellent signing. I think this is the marquee signing of the window for me. I know Larsen was the most expensive, but for me, Andre is the best pickup. I think you've got a guaranteed really, really good defensive midfielder there just to break things up and keep Wolves ticking. I think he might be the most similar to Neves, maybe, just without maybe the quality with the long-range passing. But Neves really became that sort of midfielder that was able to break up play really well and just get Wolves going with the, quick tackles to get the ball back, spread the ball out to the wingers or the fullbacks. I think Andre can be sort of that for us. Obviously, we play a little bit differently. But if we switch to the 4-3-3 with Andre sitting, and then you have Lamina and Gomez, I think that's a really, really decent midfield. You've got 2 ball carriers in Gomez and Lamina. They're both very good in terms of stamina. They can just run all game. And then you've got someone in there that allows them to get forward without worrying too much, as we have someone kind of protecting the back 4. Now, obviously, we saw in his cameo against Forest, it wasn't too long. Maybe, was it 20 minutes-ish, I think. But he looked really solid, cleaned up the ball well. There was a lot of times where Forest were trying to break and he just was there straight away with a foot in and was able to kind of play the ball out. And that was only in a cameo. So I'm really excited to see what he offers going forward in terms of starting week in, week out. What can he provide in terms of a player to break up play for Wolves? Because the issue that we've had with Lemina and Gomez is that they're great, they're very good players, but they both like to carry the ball, and when they get dispossessed, that means that Wolves are stretched, particularly when we usually have sort of a gap between the midfield and defence. So Andre coming in fixes that, and in turn means that Nori has a little bit less pressure when it comes to having to balance his defensive and attacking output. Now, I think the reason for this being is that, you know, let's say Nori gets forward, Andre can kind of drop in between the centre halves, and then you've got your 3 centre halves with a fullback as well, maybe sitting back. So you go kind of to a back 4, and then you have Nori going forward. I think that's a potential route into Wolves, you know, switching to a 4-3-3. You keep the shape, you keep the defensive solidity, whilst also allowing Nori to get forward. So let me know in the comments, which formation do you think suits Wolves best? Do you think the 4-3-3 with Andre sitting? Do you think that we just need to go back to a 3 at the back, 5 at the back, because the centre backs we have aren't good enough to play in a 4? Or do you think we should stick with the original sort of 4-2-3-1 that we've got going on, but maybe swap out one of the midfielders with Andre, maybe Lemina and Andre, or Gomez and Andre? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. It'd be interesting to see your opinions on what you think, which formation, you know, Wolves should choose going forward. Okay, and the last point for today's Talking Points video is going to be the partnership of Matheus Cunha and Jørgen Strand Larsen. Now, this is a pair that I'm very excited about. I know we haven't seen the best of yet, but for me, that Chelsea game was a huge indicator into what is going to work for Wolves this season. They drifted in and out, I think, of the game against Forest, but I think Cunha still showed a lot of bright sparks, you know, in terms of getting Wolves forward. Strand Larsen was kind of in and out of the game, but I think for me as a pair, those two offer hopefully similar synergy to Raul and Jota. Now, obviously, not going to be anywhere near that level at the moment. I'm not saying that, you know, but I do think in terms of a pair, I think that they're a very, very solid couple of players for Wolves. I think the main reason is, obviously, in the Chelsea game, we saw that their link-up play was really good. I like Larsen a lot positionally. I think he knows how to play the number 9 as a traditional number 9. He links up the play, is able to bring others in through the wingers, or whether that be midfield or the wide areas. And I think him and Cunha operate well together, because Larsen takes up defenders, which opens up space for Cunha to drive the ball into, which we know is you know, what he's best at. And it also leaves him more space to finish in the box. I think he's become a better poacher, a better finisher as time has gone on at Wolves. And I think for me at the moment, he's the player that I trust the most in front of goal. I think Larsen still has to build up a little bit of form, but when he gets chances, he scores. I mean, he scored a really tidy finish against Chelsea. Could have got an assist as well if Cunha wasn't offside. So I think those two, with the interchanging play and them being able to complement each other in the way that they play, means that Wolves have a really, really good base for a partnership this season. I think for me, you know, Larsen is the closest profile-wise that we've had to Raul Jimenez since Jimenez has kind of, you know, had that skull injury and really didn't quite recapture the same form that he had. For me, Larsen kind of reminds me of Raul Jimenez when we first got Raul Jimenez in. He's a little bit raw. Jimenez was a bit more experienced, obviously, but you can see that he's got the physical attributes and the technical attributes to be able to fill that position of the all-round 9 that we've needed for so long. And I think having a player like Cunha who can play on the wing or as a 10 that can play off him and bring others into play, I think those two are going to be key in terms of playing on the counter, or even, you know, being on the front foot in terms of freeing up space and keeping defenders occupied. That obviously then means that we can maybe shift play to other players in the wing positions, like an Nori or a Gomez, or even a Hwang if he's on form. So I think those two are going to be crucial for Wolves. Whether it blossoms as much as we want it to, we'll have to wait and see. But for me at the moment, it is the pivotal partnership for Wolves going forward. Obviously defensively we kind of need to sort that out, as I suggested in the first talking point, but for me the last talking point today has got to be Cunha and Larson. Let me know in the comments down below, how many goals and assists do you think Larson will get and Cunha will get, and let me know if there's another partnership that you're excited to see for Wolves this season, or if you're most excited to see Larsen and Cunha, and let me know how good you think those two can be as well. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the first episode of What We Learned. I hope you enjoyed the video. This is a little bit of a new format for me, so just trying to get used to it. But over the coming months, we will sort of, get out those teething problems, and we'll try and come up with a really good series for us to do once a month. Like I said, just to check in with what the fan base is talking about and what sort of things we've learned from the opening few games. Hopefully next month we'll see a little bit more progress in terms of the system. So yeah, as always, thank you for watching, and obviously in the comments please let me know the first talking point, who should Mosquera partner? The second talking point, where does 8 Nori fit? The third talking point, what formation or system do you want Wolves to use? And the fourth talking point, how far do you think Larsen and Cunha can take us this season? Let me know down below. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next episode next month.